you know the supplement of this year is to honor people in the community, organizations in the community, people who have given back to the community, people who contribute to the community, volunteer for the community and such, just to provide them an honor for what they've done for us, all of us, and to give them a plaque. So we have 3 honorees tonight, the first of which is the Morris Township Fire Department on their 100th anniversary. So can I invite Chief Jesse Carr, Deputy Chief Mike Nunn, and Mike Ryer up to the front, please? And Deputy Mayor Wilson. So we also have various standing committees that are in charge of the different functions within the township, and Deputy Mayor Wilson is in charge. She's the chair of the fire department standing committee, so she's going to do the honors.
You want the podium?
We are very happy tonight to...
Kathy, speak into the microphone.
How's that?
Better.
Okay. We're very happy tonight to recognize and celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the Township of Morris Fire Department. This anniversary is based on a lot of interesting history, which I'd like to share by reading some highlights from the proclamation that we'll be giving you. Whereas, on November 20th, 1919, the Township Committee adopted rules and regulations governing the Morris Township Fire Department and collectively took control of the individual companies that existed at that time. And whereas, at that time, there were 4 volunteer fire companies serving the Township of Morris: Mount Kimball, Collinsville, Hillside, and the 3rd District Hose Company. Whereas, each company had its own rules and regulations and its own apparatus, firehouses, and equipment. And whereas, these 4 volunteer fire companies petitioned the Township Committee that they needed additional fire apparatus and equipment, whereas the Township Committee deemed it necessary and useful for the prevention and extinguishment of fires that additional fire apparatus and equipment should be purchased, and all 4 companies agreed the Township of Morris to be the sole owner of all firehouses and fire apparatus and equipment. And whereas in 1923, the 3rd District Hose Company became the Woodland Avenue Fire Company, and in 1968, the name was changed to Woodland Hook and Ladder Company No. 1, and whereas the Morris Township Fire Department expanded in 1927 with the formation of the Fairchild Fire Company, increasing the number of fire companies to 5, whereas November 20th, 2019 marks the centennial anniversary of the Morris Township Fire Department, served by Mount Kimball Fire Company No. 1, Collinsville Fire Company, Hillside Hose Company No. 1, Woodland Hook and Ladder Company No. 1, and the Fairchild Fire Company. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the governing body of the Township of Morris hereby recognizes the centennial anniversary of the Morris Township Fire Department, and with special thanks and gratitude for those who have served the Township of Morris as firefighters over many generations. Thank you. Thank you. And I would also like to, I just want to add one additional commendation for the exceptional service that our fire department has shown. There have been several major fires in the last couple of weeks, and they were very challenging situations, and our members did a truly excellent job of handling them. We can all feel a great sense of comfort and assurance to know that we live in a community where our fire department is ready and able to handle any emergency, even those that happen in the middle of the night. So kudos to all, and happy 100th anniversary. And thank you. you.
So I want to congratulate the fire department too. Everybody should know that our fire department is made up of both career firefighters who are full-time firefighters plus a lot of volunteer firefighters within Morris Township. And I'm going to mix a little sadness with the joy of the anniversary, but about a week ago we lost one of our long-serving volunteer firemen out of the Mount Kimball Firehouse named Fred Meyer, and I just want to extend my personal condolences to his family. I've known Fred since my first days on the Township Committee over 10 years ago, and I know I'm going to miss his friendliness and his good nature. He was such a nice man, and I wanted to thank Fred for all of his years of service to the community. With that, we're going to invite Leonard Posey up to the podium. And as he's coming up to the podium, I want to acknowledge in the audience we have from the Board of Education, Alan Smith, if you could stand up for just a second, Linda Murphy, and the chair of the board, Lisa Pollack, correct? Very good, thank you. And Vice Chair Nancy Bangiola is here as well. Wow. Thanks for coming, Nancy.
And Council President for Morris.
And I'll also acknowledge Council President Toshiba Foster, who just entered the room. Thank you for coming, Toshiba. So, as I stated, we recognize a lot of people this year who have contributed to the community, and I am so pleased to have the man to my right of me to honor tonight. I have before me a certificate of recognition for community service. Leonard Posey served on the school board for 19 years, correct? 19 years serving the children of our community. It's just wonderful, all the work that you've done and all the work that the rest of the school board does for the community. They're volunteers, and they work very hard for our children. So I'm very pleased to present to Leonard a certificate of recognition in community service, and I'll read a few lines. The Mayor and Township Committee extend our grateful recognition and commendation to Leonard D. Posey for his extraordinary record of service. Mr. Posey has been a resident of Morris Township for 26 years. Through the years, he served 17 years on the school board, or is it 19?
13 in the township and 13 in the town.
13 in the township and 13 in the town. Very good. Where he advocated for academic achievement of minority students and for the district's improvement of test scores. Mr. Posey also served 2 consecutive terms on the Morris Township Economic Development Advisory Committee from 2015 to 2018, addressing the economic development needs of the Township of Morris, liaisoning between the Township's government and businesses, as well as reaching out to prospective commercial businesses and industries seeking to become members of the Morris Township corporate community. And in addition, Mr. Posey was instrumental in assisting the Morris Township Police Department with building trust and relationships within our minority community members. On behalf of the residents of Morris Township, we extend our appreciation for all of Mr. Posey's contributions to our community and wish Mr. Posey the best of luck and happiness in the future. Thank you so much, Leonard. Yes, please. Let's turn this around.
I'll take the time that the fire department gave me. So I just want to thank you, Mayor, and thank the members of the committee for the recognition. I'm leaving town, so it's a bittersweet time. I'm looking forward to spending time with 6 of my 7 grandkids in South Florida, and weather that's much more favorable than here. But as I mentioned, I've been in this community overall for 26 years and split it. The last 13 years has been great living in Morris Township, and I've met a lot of great neighbors and have had a chance to interact with members of the administration, the police and fire. And I just want to say before we go much further while the fire department is still here, and I've told this story before a couple of weeks ago, when the town recognized me in April of 2014, my daughter was involved in a very catastrophic automobile accident that left her a paraplegic in the township. And the professionalism, the response, the follow-up by the fire department, by the police department, just, you don't know how, you hear about great people that serve, but when you had a chance personally to experience it, it just made me feel good. So the taxpayers here and the residents certainly feel rest comfortably, as was acknowledged tonight, by the professionalism of our fire department and our police department. And with that being said, Tim Quinn was, during my time here, police chief when I'm not so much when I moved here, but shortly thereafter, and I've had some great experiences, as was referenced, with dealing not only with Tim as administrator and as police chief and being a member of the school board, but also with the current police chief, who I'm a big fan of, Mark DiCarlo. So I just want to shout out those two. And finally, I just want to thank President Pollack from the Board of Education, Vice President Bangiola, and other members of the Morris School District Board of Education, and the township members that are here, and one person that just came in that wasn't mentioned, and that's my friend Melissa Spielder, who just was reelected last week and is a member of a resident of the township. Thank you very much. It's been a great experience living in the township, volunteering. Mayor Crusoe and I served, I don't know if you remember this or not, on the Colonial Symphony Board many years ago. Unfortunately, that institution doesn't exist anymore. We've got some hard-working people. Appreciate the recognition and wish all of you good luck. Not only this winter when I'm hanging out in Florida, but for the rest of your time here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And next we're going to call up Cleveland Johnson from the Morris Museum, and Peter Mancuso, who used to be a trustee at the museum, is going to make the presentation.
Cleveland Johnson is the executive director, and Mrs. Horn, Jerry Horn, is the resident trustee and president of all the other trustees and chairman of the board. I asked for this honor, and Jeff was very... You can hear me, can't you? Jeff was very nice and gracious in allowing me to be here because I was a trustee at the museum for 18 years, and about 6, 7, or 8 of those years, we're not quite sure, I was the chairman of the board, as you were. So they had a wonderful honor. Cleveland is here for, like 2 or 3 years now. So let me read. In recognition and congratulations to the Morris Museum being named as a Smithsonian affiliate. Morris Museum, located in Normandy in Morris Township, will represent the Smithsonian Institution as the sole Smithsonian affiliate in New Jersey. This affiliation enables the museum members to access a nationwide network of over 200 partner organizations, receiving access to unique Smithsonian resources, and whereas the Morris Museum is providing the Smithsonian a footprint in New Jersey, and is an honor that the museum embraces and. This is a milestone and provides a chance for us to reflect on their history and all those involved in the Morris Museum community throughout the years. Morris Museum is one of New Jersey's largest and most dynamic cultural institutions in the arts, sciences, history, and theater. Although exemplary exhibitions, the museum serves approximately 4,380 people throughout the northern 438,000 people, throughout the northern and southern central parts of New Jersey. And whereas starting in 1913 as a small exhibit in Morristown Neighborhood House, the museum moved to its current location, the historic Twin Oaks Mansion, formerly owned by the Frelinghuysen family. Over the years, the museum campus was expanded to provide a 312-seat theater, art studios, classrooms, and a new wing with increased gallery space, a grand entrance pavilion, and a skylight court. The museum was also awarded in 2003 the Mercantile Guinness Collection, which is one of the world's most important collections of mechanical, musical instruments and automata, which has enhanced the role of the Morris Museum as a major cultural center. I will take a break here and say, if you haven't gone up and seen this exhibition, you have to go up and see it because it's exquisite. It's beyond anything you've ever seen and I've ever seen in my life. To finish, whereas the Morris Museum has achieved a century of excellence through their mission to elevate the cultural consciousness, excite the mind, and enhance the quality of life by advancing the understanding and enjoyment of the visual and performing arts, natural and physical sciences, and humanities throughout exhibitions, performances, and educational programs. Therefore, the Mayor and Township Committee, on behalf of the residents of Morris Township, congratulate the Morris Museum on being named a Smithsonian Building. I may get up there and tell everybody. Okay. I don't think so. Don't embarrass me. Yeah, both of you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm so grateful on behalf of my board and my staff and the wider museum community. I'm so grateful for this recognition. I just want to share a little bit briefly with what this means to us as a community. Of course, the Morris Museum is no stranger to any of you. It's an institution that's been here for well over a century. I could bet my bottom dollar that many of you had your very first museum experience at the Morris Museum. It was the very first time you ever set foot in a museum. And perhaps for your children and grandchildren, the same kind of experience. So there's no question about who we are and what we've done and our value to the community. But sometimes, you know what they say about prophets in their own land, or institutions, or people in your neighborhood. The Morris Museum, it's easy to take for granted when it's right here among us. So when you have an institution like the Smithsonian come to town and give their stamp of approval, it makes you kind of stand up and take notice, even for someone like me who works there every day and understands how important and strong an institution it is. But certainly for our community, it's an acknowledgement of the great work that's gone on for well over a century here. It's a great acknowledgement for the investment that the community has made in the institution over this period of time. But it's also a huge challenge for the community to say, oh my golly, goodness, we're really that important. Are we really doing everything that we should be doing to help this institution thrive right here in our backyard? Because, as you heard, the Morris Museum is the Smithsonian footprint in New Jersey. And so that's a great responsibility that we take on, but also a great opportunity. The challenge for us, of course, is to step out and to embrace that acknowledgement, to embrace those opportunities, while at the same time a certain amount of our reputation is kind of baked in to we're who you've always known us to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, we strive and we look forward to becoming much more than what you've known us to be, so that we fully live into and live beyond these expectations that the Smithsonian has placed on us. The Smithsonian doesn't pay anything to us. We have access to their facility, to their people, to their exhibits. We have access to all kinds of resources. We still pay for them to come here, but we have our foot in the door like no one else does. And you have essentially the Smithsonian right here in your own backyard. Of all the townships and boroughs in the state of New Jersey, we're right here with you in Morris Township, and we're terribly proud and happy, and we look forward to embracing that challenge and that opportunity, and hope that you'll come along for the ride. Thank you.
I will not speak for very long, but I just wanted to express my thanks to you all for this wonderful proclamation. I've been with the museum on the board for 30 years. Don't tell anyone that. So long. But I also have a history in government here. My husband, Michael, whom I think most of you do know, was in the governor's cabinet when the Honorable Tom Kane was our governor. I served in that administration in a far lesser position in the Department of State. Having the Smithsonian acknowledge our presence and allow the Morris Museum to become an affiliate gives me enormous pride for the institution that I've been affiliated with myself for all those years. But that governmental political part in me really feels good about Morris Township, Morris County, and the state of New Jersey. There are only 207, I believe it is, affiliates in the United States of Smithsonian affiliates, out of something like 35,000 possible museum entities. So go for it, New Jersey. We finally got one. There are only, I think it's only 1 or 2 more states which do not have affiliations with the Smithsonian at this point. So we were trailing behind, but we've come up big time. So thank you very much.
So another thing that we've implemented this year is having 2 public commentary sessions. We used to have them at the very end of the meeting and make everybody stay till the very end, but we've added a second public commentary section here on the agenda. So I am going to read a speaker's limitation.
You want to do a quick break?
You want to take a quick break? Okay. Sure. We'll take just a 2-minute break. Anybody who's here for the presentations, we'll let you head on out. We'll just come back in 2 minutes. Sure. No. Either, as one term, a person may be heard for an additional unassignable. They can't assign it. I guess that implies that the first 5 minutes may be.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oops, not yet. Not yet. Now? Okay, so as I started saying before, we have 2 public commentary sessions. One is about to begin now. I'm going to read a speaker's time limitation. I, Jeffrey Grazel, announce that in order to give interested parties a fair chance to be heard, each speaker could comment for an unassignable period of 5 minutes before turning the microphone over to the next speaker, and that after each has had 1 turn, a person may be heard for an additional unassignable period of 5 minutes. And given the number of people in the audience who I believe want to be heard, we are going to stick to that 5-minute limit. And if anybody would like to come up and address the Township Committee, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Yes, good evening. My name is Pat Sims, and I'm with the Morris Township Office of Emergency Management here in the township. And I've just become before the committee again tonight. We are working on doing our Roses fundraiser. This year again, we'll have them at the Hillside Firehouse on 132 Western Avenue in Morris Township. So we're going to send a letter to the Township Committee looking for their support and then public support. So we do a Roses fundraiser to help us raise money for equipment, clothing. We do it February 12th, 13th, and 14th up at the Hillside Firehouse. So more to come. It'll be in the paper and everything on Facebook, so everybody should see it then. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else in the public like to be heard? There are many people here, so I'm sure somebody wants to be heard. I just want to remind you, we're going to try to stick to 5 minutes here.
Yes. Hi, my name is Richard O'Donnell. I live at 72 Gaston Road in the Township. Just briefly want to go over, I could go over for hours the background, but in the spirit of time, I've been living with a zoning problem in the township for about 20 years. I live in an RA 130 zone that's strictly residential, and I have neighbors that continue to use their property as a commercial storage site. They have dump trucks, loaders, trailers, employees, and so forth, and come in and out of this site every day, almost every day, sometimes Sundays, holidays, depending on their needs. And I've been living with this for much too long. So most recently on October 7th in the planning board meeting, the expert there, a fellow by the name of Mr. Phillips, I believe, heard the issues. I provided a lot more information than there's time to do here, and determined that, in fact, if you have a garage on your property, that does not permit you to run dump trucks, employees, trailers, and whatnot in there regularly and stored equipment. And however, the Township Code 95 on this subject is a bit gray in that some township officials have interpreted it as being, if you have a garage on a residential property, that gives you the right basically to have employees, commerce, dump trucks and whatnot going in and out. I disagree with that, and I think the law needs to be clarified in this respect. The traditional method in this township, as I understand it, for resolving this has traditionally been to go to what they call the Board of Adjustment. But to my chagrin, I found out that to go to the Board of Adjustment, and I'm the victim of all this nuisance activity on my border of my property, for me to go to the Board of Adjustment and ask them to rule on this, I have to post a minimum $1,500 in cash to have them even look at this. And seeing that I'm the victim of this type of activity, I'm appealing to the Township Council to take a look at this and see if they can clarify the law to avoid having to spend $1,500. I think the neighboring property that's perpetrating all these things, if anything, should be required to go to the Board of Adjustment and pay the $1,500 to make a case why they think they can use a residential property for a commercial business. In return, I'm being put in a position where they're operating this way day in and day out, running down my property value, disturbing my quiet enjoyment, and under the township rules, I'm the one who has to spend $1,500 just to have my complaint heard, and I don't think that's fair. So I leave this before the Township Council to see if they can give me any relief on this matter other than what I've been able to get so far.
We will take that under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Just heard from Mr. Quinn, they did receive a notice of violation recently for a truck that's on their property, and they have 10 days, trailer? And they'll have 10 days from that date of notice to remove it. Is there anything else currently that, since you live next door, that's there?
Yeah, well, I guess there's in the interest of time, there's two things going on here simultaneously. One is they're storing commercial construction trailers, commercial backhoes, things of that nature on the property long term. Some of these some like the one that Mr. Quinn may be referring to has been on their property now for 2 months and not moved. I'm talking huge piece of commercial backhoe. That's a clear violation. The code is clear. You cannot do that in a residential zone. Where the code is not clear is the daily ingress and egress of employees, dump trucks, and whatnot to get materials in and out of their garage. That is really where the law is gray, and I need some further help, because that goes on, depending on what week it is, daily, sometimes in the morning, sometimes at night, including weekends.
Right.
Depends on the needs of their job. So there's an A and a B part. The A part, they've been fined, they've gone to court already, been convicted, but yet for some reason, they still continue to store the equipment there. And
we understand. Mr. Mills, do you agree with this A part and B part?
Mayor, it's very fact-sensitive issue. This body is not really an enforcement issue, but what I indicated while you were slightly distracted with the clerk was that we would take a look at it, certainly take it under advisement, take a look. I'm unfamiliar with the actual court decision that Mr. O'Donnell is speaking about. I'll take a look at that and then apprise the committee of what I find out, and we'll determine where to go from there.
Okay. And what about his comment about who's, I know we've told Mr. O'Donnell he has to go before the Board of Adjustment.
Well,
is there any way to
the statute, I didn't realize, or maybe I should have known, but I didn't know, or didn't recall it, that the zoning officer had issued a ruling last year, perhaps, and in the face of, it's called a determination by an administrative officer. The window, which is a hard window to take an appeal of that, had Mr. O'Donnell wished to do so, was 20 days from when he was made aware of that ruling. So that ship has sailed. But that doesn't preclude us from looking affirmatively into the issues that have been raised and seeing if there's something that we can do legislatively.
Okay.
And Mr. Quinn can advise his administrative people accordingly.
Well,
okay.
Mr. Mills, just one quick follow-up. The only notice that I received from the zoning officer was an email, which, and he did not have his facts straight, I must say, and I'm happy to document that comment. But there was no such thing as this is a formal ruling and you have 20 days to appeal it or anything resembling that. Because if there had been, you can believe me, I would not have missed that.
Okay, we're gonna let Mr. Mills take a look at that. That's another point you can look at see how it was mailed out and delivered.
We'll do. We're collectively sorry you find yourself in this position. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and so you're going to be back, and just in terms of closure on this, are you going to call me or?
Well, coordinate with Mr. Quinn, and one of us will be in touch with you, or the mayor as representative of this body. We will get some position gelled and figure out a course of action.
Yeah, and you mentioned, just to close, you mentioned facts. If there's a need for on-site observation, daily pictures, anything of that nature. I'm calling, things that document this whole process. I'm happy to provide that.
Understood.
I don't believe in hearsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to be heard? I think I saw somebody stand up before. Again, please state your name and address.
My name is Elizabeth Carroll. I live at 54 Livingston Road. And I'm a lifelong resident of Morris Township. I grew up over on Slimore Drive. And I've been a homeowner in affordable housing in Rose Arbor for 25 years now. And I know you guys are aware, we've all been in touch with various members to explain what our issue is, but we thought it would be a good idea, a bunch of us to come here just to see if you can give us a hand, help us resolve our issue.
Sure, and just to let you know, before this meeting, we were all briefed. The entire governing body was briefed on the latest updates from last night.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wrote down like kind of a quick, is it okay if I read this?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating something you already
No,
know.
that's okay. Mrs. Amelia just asked, could you repeat your address?
I live at 54 Livingston Road.
Thank you.
On November 1st, 2019, our association sent the affordable housing owners in Rose Arbor a letter stating that as of January 1st, 2020, they would begin the process of tripling our association fees so that within 2 years we would be paying the same amount as the owners of the market rate units. They cited a state law from December 20th of 2004 and a municipal ordinance dated 5/16/18 that they say require them to change our rates in order to be in compliance with state and municipal law. The subsection of the state law does say that affordable units should be assessed the same fee as the market rate units, but it goes on to say, and I quote, "Notwithstanding the foregoing sentence, condominium units subject to a municipal ordinance adopted before October 1st, 2001, which provides for condominium or homeowner association fees and or assessments different from those provided for in this subsection, shall have such fees and assessments governed by said ordinance." And our contention is that second sentence in the subsection applies to us since Rose Arbor Condominium Association was created under said ordinance and should be required to abide by the provisions of the ordinance, which state that owners of affordable housing units in Morris Township will pay 33.3% of the association fee assessed upon the market rate units. And your committee voted for a new ordinance in May of 2018, which addresses association fees by saying, for any affordable housing unit that is part of a condominium association and or a homeowners association, the master deed shall reflect that the association fee assessed for each affordable housing unit shall be established at 100% of the market rate fee. It's the opinion of our association that this municipal ordinance replaces and supersedes the prior ordinance and state statute and clears them to raise our fees to the level of the market rate units. I've spoken to 2 attorneys who agree that the association is wrong. They both said that the state statute remains in effect because the municipal government does not have the authority to amend or override a state law. There was a meeting of the association board last night, and we presented this information to them and their attorney, but they were not swayed. They informed us that the only way to address this is through filing a mediation request through the board. They did agree to postpone voting on this amendment to the master deed until February. Although my own legal advisors have told me that the ordinance you passed in 2018 does not override the prior state statute, the association board refuses to accept that. So therefore, what we would like to, a lot of us here would like to request is that the committee amend that part of your ordinance, if possible, to reflect the language that's in the state statute stipulating that units subject to your prior municipal ordinance continue to pay fees as assessed in that ordinance, and that would be a simple resolution for all the parties that are involved. Thank you.
Mr. Mills, would you like to comment?
Only to the extent that you've accurately summarized the nature of the briefing and discussion that the governing body engaged in, and that an amendment to that ordinance is, in fact, what we plan to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank these people, not me.
So we are going to be planning a special meeting because when you introduce an ordinance, you need 2 sessions, an introduction and then there's a public hearing. Ordinances can't be introduced in 1 year and carried to the next year. Since we only have 1 meeting left, we're going to be calling a special meeting We tentatively determined that's going to be on December 2nd, subject to, I think, some final decisions, but tentatively on December 2nd, and then we'll have a final hearing on that at our regular meeting on December 18th. So we'll be taking public commentary again on December 18th on that new ordinance, but that is the way we are going to be proceeding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And maybe that saved 10 other people from getting up and having to speak, right? Yeah, no, public commentary is still open. Anybody who wishes to come address the Township Committee may do so.
As we like to say, don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
So again, just state your name and address, please.
My name is Carolyn Russo. I live at 5 Livingston Road, which is Rose Arbor Condos. To have a 325% increase, you know, that's what they're asking for. Well, we would end up paying what the regular people in their regular, you know what I'm saying, condos, yeah. And it's crazy because if I have a 400 square foot condo and they have a 2,000 foot square condo and we're paying the same amount, it's like if it goes up to 325%, that's taking food money out of my budget. I'm on a strict budget. Believe me, if I could move out, I would, but I can't afford it. And this will definitely affect my life in a extremely negative way. Because when I retire, I would never be able to even pay for that.
So
I just want to make sure that you get, you know, it's just out there.
We understand.
I don't care.
You did bring up one.
It's done when it's on a piece of paper.
But before you leave, one thing that wasn't clear to me, and maybe it's moot, but if people just pay different fees, levels of fees based on the size of their units, or it's really a flat fee across every single unit. Bigger units don't pay more than smaller units?
No, low housing and moderate.
Everybody pays this, no matter what size unit you have, everybody pays the same? Oh, you're just saying for the affordables, it's all the same?
It's all the
yeah.
same.
I was talking about the other ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Since you made a comparison of
Yeah,
300%, I didn't know what you were comparing it to.
325% increase.
Compared to what? That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, so if it went up that high this year, 10 years from now, it might go up to 1,000.
Very good. And we also understand, I think all of us understand, that you bought into those units with an understanding of what you were going to pay going forward. So we get that.
I just wanted
we get that too.
Yes, I really appreciate your hard work.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We aim to please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there anybody else who would like to be heard before the Township Committee? Please approach the microphone. Name and address, please.
My name is William Madden. I live at 64 Old Glen Road in the Township. I'm here this evening on behalf of a group of neighbors on Old Glen Road and nearby streets to speak briefly about our efforts to improve the safety on Old Glen Road for pedestrians, bicyclists, including senior citizens and children. Before I go further, I would like to thank Ms. Wilson and Mr. Gorfey for the opportunity to meet with them during office hours last week on these same issues that I'm about to speak about. We had a very constructive discussion on the topic, and my neighbors and I look forward to continuing our dialogue with the Township Committee in the future. You will probably recall the efforts of Alita Karras, who lives at 60 Old Glen Road, to establish safer walkways for pedestrians. She was focused unitarily on this one issue. There is now a working group of about 10 residents, including Alita, who are actively leading a campaign to achieve a safer environment on and near Old Glen Road. We now have about 50 residents who have indicated their support for the initiatives that we're proposing, and I'm sure that there will be more added in the future. Briefly stated, we're primarily concerned about unsafe conditions on Old Glen Road and at the intersection of Old Glen Road and Woodland Avenue. The items that we're focusing on include, first of all, we're concerned about the timely completion of the repaving of Old Glen Road and the restoration of the large painted 25-mile-per-hour speed limit markings and painted shoulder markings. There have been some public announcements that have stated this will be done sometime in November. Second, we would like to see more consistent, strict police enforcement of the posted 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on Old Glen Road, as well as strict police enforcement of the 4-ton weight limit for trucks. We regularly see traffic flowing at well over the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and see large delivery trucks that must weigh over 4 tons. Third, we would like to see the police regularly use automatic speed detectors and feedback devices to deter speeding, as has been done in the past. We do understand that there's been a lot of construction activity and utility activity on Old Glen Road, and maybe that was the reason that was stopped for a while. Fourth, we would like to see the installation of a pedestrian crosswalk across Woodland Avenue at the intersection with Old Glen Road, similar to the crosswalks that exist where Bennington Road intersects Woodland Avenue and where Crestview Terrace intersects Woodland Avenue. This would facilitate access to the Ginty Recreational Complex for the many residents of nearby streets, including families, children, senior citizens who wish to walk to the Ginty swimming pool, athletic fields, playground, and outdoor gazebo. Fifth, we would like to see a traffic study done to determine the feasibility of installing a traffic signal and walk, don't walk signals at the corner of Old Glen Road and Woodland Avenue. And this would be similar to the traffic signals the Township installed at the intersection of Madison Avenue and Canfield Road, Punchbowl Road. In addition, we would like to see a formal study conducted of the heavy vehicle traffic in the area of Old Glen Road, which might result in additional measures to increase safety, including the possibility of a well-marked, visually separated pedestrian lane for pedestrians and bicyclists on Old Glen Road. And that, by the way, was the single issue that Alita Karras was focused on. We would want to ensure that the existing street lighting is working properly and to install additional street lighting on Old Glen Road and feeder streets as needed. At our office hours discussion last week, Ms. Wilson shared that any studies to determine A, the feasibility of installing a traffic signal and walk, don't walk signals at the corner of Old Glen Road and Woodland Avenue, and B, the feasibility of well-marked, visually separated pedestrian lanes for pedestrians and bicyclists on Old Glen Road would be part of the work of the Township's new Transportation Advisory Committee, of which I believe she is the chairperson. So those are our concerns and the initiatives that we're taking. I would be glad to devote the rest of my allotted time to any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madden.
Thanks, Mr. Madden. Just to let you know, I did share your notes with the rest of the Township Committee members, especially the handout you gave us, so thank you for writing those all up and providing them for us. And I believe most of the members got those last week, so we have them on file to review ourselves. And thank you for taking the time to come into office hours to speak with Deputy Mayor and I.
You're welcome.
Is what you gave Mr. Jorphy reflected in the remarks you gave tonight? So we don't need a copy of what you just told us?
I believe that is true. Do you?
Yeah, what you provided us last week, what I sent out.
The feedback from office hours.
Okay, very good. And just so the public understands what we've discussed previously, one thing this governing body has done this year is we created a new Transportation Advisory Committee a couple weeks ago with the intent of trying to get people out of their cars and onto their feet and bicycles to get around town, to make connections between various government facilities, especially our recreation facilities, and this is an area of town that we're going to be looking at. Transportation Advisory Committee hasn't met yet, and we'll be discussing this as one of their projects going forward. So we're aware of the issues, but thank you for bringing to our attention all the other things.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Madden, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mancuso and I had office hours as well, and we did meet with a group from Old Glen. And that evening, and Mr. Quinn, I believe, was in the room with us as well. There were many ideas that I had come up with, that Peter came up with, that both of us came up with, that we were throwing out, trying to come up with a solution to assist with this issue. Obviously, we want our township to be as safe as possible for all. Unfortunately, because of certain federal guidelines, we're limited to what we can and can't do. But that doesn't mean that we're still not working tirelessly to come up with solutions. One of the solutions that I had proposed that evening, and Mr. Quinn has been working on trying to figure out how we can make it happen, is to at least have a crosswalk from Old Glen to the other side of Woodland. One does not exist there right now. The only way that you can have a crosswalk is if two sidewalks connect each other. Seeing how there isn't a sidewalk on the corner of Old Glen, I then proposed, why don't we just put a sidewalk only on the corner to bypass that restriction. You can't have a sidewalk going to nowhere. So the next idea that I proposed was, and Mr. Quinn in our engineering department is looking into it, is to have a sidewalk go from Old Glen to the municipal building, which then would allow us to have a crosswalk from Old Glen to Woodland, on the other side of Woodland, and also would connect a walking path to get to the municipal building, which then you can cross to go to the Ginty Field. So that's something that's being worked on right now, as well as another idea of some traffic calming measures on Woodland, right in between our police department and the municipal building here, which also makes sense to have a connection of sidewalks to be able to transport our bodies with our feet.
Could I please have you explain again the concept of a sidewalk, as I understood, a sidewalk connecting Old Glen to the municipal building, if I understood correctly.
Correct.
And then from that sidewalk, a crosswalk to go across Woodland Avenue. So
at Old Glen, yes.
Oh, I see. So in other words, the sidewalk would run along Woodland Avenue and it would go up to the corner of Old Glen and Woodland, and then from that corner there could be a crosswalk to the other side of Woodland. Is that
Correct.
what we're saying?
Some of the residents that came to our office hour meeting had requested, could we at least put a crosswalk there?
Yes.
So in order for us to be able to do that, this is where all the ideas were being tossed out. Let's just put a sidewalk on the corner. And so the thought now is to run a sidewalk from Old Glen to the municipal building, and hopefully within the next month.
Okay.
It'd be part of the 2020 budget.
Right. Okay.
Okay. The point I would just like to make in that regard is, and I'll have to look at it further, but as we stated earlier, there is a crosswalk between Bennington Road to go across Woodland Avenue to the other side, and the same thing for Crestview Terrace. And I'm not terribly sure that there is, other than the little sidewalk stub, if you will, at the corner of Bennington and, well, at the corner of Bennington and Woodland, and also at the corner of Crestview Terrace and Woodland, I'm not sure there's an existing true sidewalk down to that corner. So I'll have to look at that more carefully.
I believe there is.
Well, in the case of Bennington, it's a asphalt paved quote sidewalk. In the case of Crestview Terrace, I'm not sure if what exists. I see. Okay, but all right. Well, anyway, thank you for the creativity there. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Madden.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to thank you for coming in again, and we did talk about you coming to the TAC meeting, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and I'm really looking forward to that committee. We have a number of locations around town. Old Glen is one of them, where there are various safety challenges or connectivity challenges, and people are engaged in coming up with ideas and making solutions, having discussions, and I just think it's a really interesting conversation, and I believe in the potential here for coming up with creative solutions that are cost effective and can really help quality of life. So I encourage you to follow the Transportation Advisory Committee, and please, we really appreciate your ideas and others that have been submitted for this location and others as well.
You're welcome, and by the way, Alita would like to have been here tonight, but she could not be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You.
Is there anybody else from the public who would like to be heard at this time? No, and seeing none, I am going to close the public session. Next on the agenda is a discussion of 2019 best practices, and I'm going to let our township administrator do that.
Anybody want?
Yeah, and if anybody wants to leave, you are welcome to leave.
Thanks for coming.
The meeting should only be another 20 minutes if you want.
This is riveting stuff here coming up. Riveting.
Thank you.
I told everybody you had a sense of humor.
Go ahead.
Very good tonight.
But they wouldn't listen.
Go ahead.
All right.
Let's keep it moving.
All right. For the last 5 or 6 years, the state of New Jersey has implemented a thing called the Best Practices Inventory, and each municipality and city is required to fill this out and complete it, and it's also tied into your state aid that you receive. That's not really state aid, but to get it, you have to fill this out. Correct. This year's Best Practices Inventory consisted of 48 questions involving government practices for personnel, budgeting, financial administration, capital projects, transparency, procurement, shared service, and cybersecurity. To pass and get your state aid, you need a score of 30. I'm pleased to report that we did very well, and we scored 45, which is about as high as you can get. So we're going to get our state aid. The other thing is the state of New Jersey, wanting to get some additional information, also added in another 35 questions that are quote-unquote unscored, and they're looking for information on operations, planning and economic development, environment, and affordable housing. So all of that information has been compiled and completed, and the best practices inventory was submitted to the state of New Jersey, so we are compliant. And I would open that up to anybody who has any questions on it. You all have a copy of the questionnaire in front of you.
I'm just delighted that we have reached this point. Several years ago, we are sort of on the cusp, and with the addition of Francine DeAngelis as our Chief Financial Officer, she has done a marvelous job along with Mr. Quinn and the committee, and thank you, and appreciate everything you've done.
Now I just need to figure out how to get my kid to score a 45 out of 30 points on his tests, and
we got
extra
credit.
We got extra credit. Okay.
We need that carryover to next year. You know, it's kind of like the budget, have carryover.
Very good. Next we have 2 ordinances for introduction. Mr. Mills, will you take on 3119, please?
An ordinance to prohibit the use of plastic bags and regulate the use of paper bags by retail establishments within the township. This one and 3219 there will be further considered for second reading public hearing on December 18th at 7 o'clock.
Very good. And for those that were here last month, our environmental committee did a great job surveying the community, and they came forward with a recommendation, as has been done in several other adjoining communities in Madison, Chatham Township, and Chatham Borough, and Parsippany nearby that have banned plastic bags already, and we are going to be moving forward with banning plastic bags ourselves. I had hoped that the state of New Jersey would have taken some action sometime this year. It hasn't happened, so the individual communities are doing it themselves, and Morris Township is now going to be next. So we're going to have a public hearing on that at our December 18th meeting. And if anybody wants to, but in the interim, if anybody has any questions, actually, we're gonna vote to introduce this first, and then I'll see if the public has any questions. So will somebody move that?
I'll move it, sir.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arvanites? Yes. Mr. Jarkin?
Yes.
Mr. Maxine?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mrs. Schultz?
Yes. And so as another thing we implemented this year, when an ordinance is introduced, if the public has questions after its introduction, you're welcome to come forward and ask questions. Again, there's going to be an official public hearing on December 18th with a final vote. So seeing nobody, we will move on to 3219, Mr. Mills.
An ordinance appropriating $195,000 available in the general fund balance to provide for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Morris.
Very good. And this ordinance, here we go. If you look online where our ordinance is printed, but we are going to make some capital appropriations for three purposes that are included in this ordinance. A purchase of body-worn cameras, including the equipment, software, and licensing of technical service upgrades. We purchased some body cams this year and last year as well, or just this year?
Both years.
Both years. And this purchase is going to complete the body cams so that body cam purchases so that every single officer in the Township of Morris will have a body-worn camera. The research and the anecdotal evidence that we've heard is it's good for the public as well as being good for the police. The public has a record of what transpires between an officer and the public. The police officer has a record of what transpires between the officer and the public, and I think it's good all around. So we are purchasing that for the rest of our police department. Second is DPW fuel management system, and the third is sidewalk improvements as set forth on the project list filed by the engineering department, and we're going to be putting in a small section of sidewalk along James Street to connect to the portion of sidewalk that was just installed by Morristown this year. And so we'll be able to connect the neighborhood of Cottonwood and Applewood, as well as the neighborhood across the street of Foots Lane, to the sidewalk that Morristown graciously put in this year per long-running discussions. So will somebody move 3219, please?
Second.
Roll call?
Yes. May I say one thing?
Yes, sure.
I'm proud of the hard work that Mayor Grazel and I put in with our professionals to come up with a solution on finishing this this part of the sidewalk on James Street. The solution that was presented and that we agreed on moving forward not only completes the sidewalk so that residents on James Street and the vicinity of the properties and streets in the vicinity of James Street can walk around our town, but also to Morristown. But we also came up with a solution, thanks to Mr. Quinn and our professionals, in such a way that we could save approximately $140,000 as well. So not only does it complete a project for us, it connects communities, but it also saved us $140,000 in doing this. So I commend our committee and Mr. Quinn and our professionals for coming up with this solution. And I'll vote yes.
Very good. So roll call, please.
Mr. Abernathy? Yes. Mr. Dorothy?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Bishop?
Yes. And again, if anybody has any questions on 3219, you can come forward and ask them.
League over 10 Arrowhead Road. So with the completion of the James Street sidewalk, will there now be, and this is sort of the concept of crosswalks, we were just talking about that earlier on Woodland Road, will there now be crosswalks from Cottonwood and that side of the road as part of that implementation?
Yes, there's going to be a crosswalk from one side of the street to the other, so people coming out of Foots Lane can walk across the street to connect to the sidewalk. It'll go down James Street on the other side. They're going to have to cross back to connect to the Morristown sidewalk. But they'll be able to exit their neighborhood safely along James Street.
Okay, great.
And there's an existing sidewalk on Cottonwood, so the people on that side of the road will now have an actual loop in their neighborhood that they can walk.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Also, from an environmental standpoint, we didn't have to disrupt many trees with this model. I think only 2 trees might have to be, or maybe even 1. Multiple trees.
And the DEP stream crossing issue is pretty much alleviated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was, win-win all the way around. Probably 4 ways around. Okay. Next, we have one ordinance for public hearing and final consideration. Mr. Mills, 2719, please.
As has been our practice, I'll read the title. I'd ask you to call for a motion to adopt in a second and open public hearing entitled RE amending Chapter 15, Section 7, subsection E, vacations and holidays, changing Martin Luther King Day in lieu of Lincoln's birthday.
So just as a little background, currently the township is closed on Lincoln's birthday and we're open on Martin Luther King Day. And this is simply, correct? What?
Lincoln's birthday was a floater.
Lincoln's birthday was a floater holiday.
Except for the Department of Public Works.
Okay, so now we're going to officially be making Martin Luther King Day a holiday in lieu of this floating holiday that was Lincoln's birthday.
We had to change the labor
Right,
agreement.
and so we're changing this because we had to change the labor agreement to reflect that, and we're just making it official now. So can I have a motion to
Offer.
Very good. So with that second, I'll open it up for public questioning since this is a public hearing. If anybody has a question on 2719, and seeing none, I will close the public session and ask for a roll call.
Mr. Sarvanides?
Yes.
Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griselle?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk public proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. I'm glad Martin Luther King Day is now an official holiday in the Township of Morris. Well deserving. Well deserving. Resolutions. We have resolutions 19219 to 20219. Coming out of closed session, we do not have any additional resolutions to add to this list, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so will somebody move 192?
I will offer the resolutions, Mr. Mayor.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Sarvanides? Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griselle?
Yes. General business correspondence. Well, we have the consent calendar, attachment A as circulated. Will somebody move that?
So moved.
Seconded.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next, standing committee reports. I know Mr. Arvanites just gave one about the engineering committee, so thank you for that. We'll include those comments as an engineering subcommittee, standing committee report. Do you have anything else that you would like to add? Very good. We'll move to you, Mr.
Sure.
Durfee.
For the Communications Standing Committee, our office hours will be December 11th, and up for office hours in December are Mayor Griselle and Committeeman Arvanites. So if they're able to do that, the date or the time will be sent out. The Communications Committee will also be working on an end-of-year recap for residents to see the actions the Township Committee has taken over the past year. So looking forward to putting that communication together for the end of December. The Legislation Standing Committee met with Administrator Quinn, our Township Attorney, Mr. Mills, and Buzz Kenny from the Environmental Commission to go over the plastic bag, single-use plastic bag ordinance earlier in the month, and we had a very comprehensive discussion, I would describe it, a few weeks ago, so that we were able to get the ordinance introduced tonight. So thank you to everyone for meeting on that to discuss that topic in depth. We are also, the Standing Committee also will be monitoring developments in Trenton as they relate to laws governing vaping. I believe actually tomorrow, one of the Assembly committees will be reviewing 3 state proposed laws on the issue of vaping, and so we'll be monitoring that to see how it may impact our town if it does actually get passed through the Assembly and goes to the Senate. And lastly, the Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Mancuso and I met with our administrator to do a walkthrough of Common Station last Friday to see what ways we can improve the waiting room area and other parts of the station for our commuters, to look at some improvements and just general improvements in the station facility itself. So from normal wear and tear over the years. So looking forward to getting some of those improvements made in the near future. So those are my standing committee reports.
Very good. And I'll just tag on to your vaping comments. One thing coming out of the vaping discussions earlier this year that we had, and we had discussions over several meetings about the issue of vaping, and we had a proposed ordinance. After that, we had somebody come forward from the public who was doing their master's degree, who wanted to do a public service and public health project, who took on the issue of exploring vaping in the community. And it looks like we're going to be having a public presentation of her findings at our December 18th meeting. So if you're interested in vaping, I invite you to come back on December 18th. Check the agenda first to make sure that we are doing it, but it looks like she's going to be ready to make a presentation to the community on her findings on vaping. Mr. Mancuso.
Just to reiterate what Mark said, having commuted from Convent Station for 38 years, I was a natural to work along with Mark, who does it now. We looked at places where we're going to retile, we're going to refloor, we're going to do some painting, get the benches all up to speed, and it was a very productive meeting. The weather held out for us too, so that's what I have there. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the best practices situation that we voted on today. And once again, Francine DeAngelis, our Chief Financial Officer, has done Herculean work as far as making this work and get us a grade of 45. I'm not quite sure how much higher you can go, but according to Mr. Quinn, that's about as best as we can do. So I'm just delighted that we have a person of that magnitude, of that ability working for us. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Yes. On the Fire Department Standing Committee, I wanted to mention a couple of things that have happened in addition to what we've already talked about. The Halloween activities were held at Woodland, Hillside, and Fairchild. A lot of kids and moms and dads came out and had a really great time. The department was saddened by the passing of two members recently, in just the last couple of weeks, Jim Hendrickson and Fred Meyer. And please keep them all in your thoughts and prayers. One other announcement, our fire department has such a rich history, and one of our members, Mike Ryer, has written a book which is about to be published, and so everyone's looking forward to seeing what he's written. He's certainly got a lot of material to work with, so that's an exciting piece of news. On the Transportation Standing Committee, on October 24th, Mr. Quinn, myself, and one of our new TAC members, the Transportation Advisory Committee, Alita Karas, the three of us attended a workshop on Complete Streets. In case you're not aware, Complete Streets is an initiative that encourages towns to work with streets based on the assumption that streets are not just for cars, they're for everyone, which would include pedestrians and bicyclists, and developing a Complete Streets policy that's specifically tailored to our town and how we want to handle this notion. It's one of the challenges that our TAC committee will be looking at. And I would have to say this workshop was very helpful in providing us the information we need to do that. And TAC will be meeting its first meeting at some point in mid-December. We're working now to finalize the date. And then as far as our Environment, Energy, and Sustainability Standing Committee, I'm very proud of the plastic bag ordinance that we introduced tonight. There was a lot of hard work that went into it on the part of Mr. Quinn, Mr. Mills, Mr. Dorothy, Mr. Kenny, and myself. We worked through a lot of details to get to this point, and I thank everybody for all your good work and your efforts. Creating this ordinance, to me, was kind of a case study, and details matter, but at the same time, it's also important, I think, to keep the big, broader picture in mind. So, and from there, what I really see, I see this ordinance as a first step in changing how we think about plastic bags and what our habits and behaviors in using them are. It's a first step. There's more to come. So I look forward to working together in the days ahead to make any, we may need to make a couple little tweaks here and there. We'll see. And especially important to me in the ordinance, there's one sentence in there that to me is the most critical piece of the whole thing, which references the need for that the Township of Morris may institute a reusable bag education program. And I personally see the education and outreach piece of this as really important, key, especially in the first 6 months after it's implemented, but ongoing after that as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Welcome. And you actually wear 2 hats as Environmental and Sustainability Committee and Legislation Standing Committee, working on the plastic bag ordinance.
That's true.
And I would also like to point out, given your remarks and what I said previously, Resolution 194-19 is a resolution urging the state of New Jersey to ban retail establishments from providing single-use plastic bags. And you worked very hard in crafting the language for that resolution. We are going to be sending it down to Trenton, I hope tomorrow, so that they can look at it in the lame duck session that's coming up.
I will add one thing on that, Mayor. I did a little research on, we were discussing in a previous meeting, why is it that the state has never passed an ordinance? And what I found was that in 2018, it did come up in the state legislature, a proposal to institute a 5-cent fine on plastic bags, single-use carry-out plastic bags, and the governor vetoed that. And the environmental groups were kind of split in their response. There were some that cheered him because they wanted the ban instead of a fine, and there were other groups that were disappointed because they felt that the fine would be a good first step toward raising awareness that's needed to change behavior. So nothing has happened since then.
Very good. So for my standing committee reports, in addition to what Mr. Arvanites stated about engineering, on the sewer standing committee, which Mr. Arvanites and I both sit on as well, there's a discussion about increasing the capacity of the Gregory Avenue pump station. Gregory Avenue is near the border of Morris Plains at Hanover Avenue. We take all of the sewage from Morris Plains, and Morris Plains is expanding. There's a big development across the street happening on American Way, and we need to expand the pump station at Gregory Avenue to accept additional sewage flows from Morris Plains.
They're going to pay for it.
Yes, but they're going to pay for it. Yes, they're paying. They are paying for the expansion because it's.
That's it.
Where we
got to pay.
Yeah, they got to pay. Last month I mentioned that I had called for a mayor's roundtable on shared services, and I'm pleased that that meeting took place. We had the mayors of Madison, Mayor Conley, Mayor Jason Carr from Morris Plains, and Mayor Tim Doherty from Morristown, who came to Town Hall to join us. Each of their administrators came as well. Mr. Quinn was there. And we also had the shared services czar that was appointed by the state of New Jersey, named Nick Platt, who reports apparently directly to Governor Murphy on this special shared services issue, as well as one of his aides, Jocelyn Matheson, to facilitate the discussion. And what basically came out of the discussion is we came up with a framework of numbers that we're going to be conglomerating from all the different towns. There's going to be a spreadsheet that gets circulated where we fill in our numbers for the different functions that we perform to see who's doing it most efficiently, how much we spend on each of the functions per some metric that we're going to come up with. So, for example, snow plowing per mile of road. We're going to look at all of these things and how we do it. We're also going to take an inventory of our most expensive equipment, fire equipment, like I said, plows, garbage trucks. We talked about sewage facility cameras that go through the pipes to look at what might be clogging the pipes, those kinds of things, to see if there's a way that we can start sharing these expensive pieces of equipment that aren't used as frequently within the municipality. So we're trying to set up a second date once we figure out, once everybody gets their data back in, we'll be setting up another meeting, but I thought it was a very fruitful discussion. Lastly, finance. Our bond sale was completed. Mr. Quinn, again, and Francine DeAngelo, as Mr. Mancuso had mentioned earlier, did a fantastic job. We got a rate of, I believe, 1.82%? 1.84%. And they just did a fantastic job. So we took all of our capital expenses from 2014 to 2019. 2015 to 2019, so 5 years worth, and rolled them into a new bond of $13.1 million, is it?
Minus the $770,000 for the premium.
Okay. $13.1 million minus, we get a premium back after we purchase the bond, and we use that premium towards reducing our swim pool debt for that period of 2015 to 2019. So very successful sale. And again, thank you, Mr. Quinn and Francine DeAngelis. Do you have anything to add to
I think
that?
it was just wonderful how it worked out. Mr. Quinn, could you explain to everybody what that premium was, where they came from, and how we were able to redeem some of our bonds?
This bond sale was $2.4 million in general obligations bonds and about $750,000 in bonds for the swim pool utility, and that's improvements that have been made over the last 5 years. When you do a bond sale, besides getting the interest rate, they also pay you what's called a premium towards that's supposed to be used to help offset then the capital debt. What we decided to do was, because we subsidized the pool every year for the debt services, to eliminate that debt service. So we took that premium and we paid off the debt service for 2015 through 2019 for the pool utility, with the exception of $17,000, which we'll be taking care of next year. But that will help us over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, of not having to subsidize the pool an additional $70,000 per year.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Very good. And just to explain the process, there was an actual auction that took place.
Correct.
All right. So we went to auction with the financial numbers that encompass what's in the bond and the financial background from the township, which took a lot of time providing all the financial background from the township to get our credit rating of AAA. And what was interesting is we got various bids, but one bid had a lower interest rate but a lower premium return. Right, and one bid had a little bit higher interest rate, but they were giving us more money back in this premium that we could use to buy down debt. And so it was very interesting in that respect. So we actually took the rate that was just a little bit higher, but it gave us a nice bump in the premium, correct?
It was kind of the other way around. The premium was a little bit lower, but the rate was lower.
Ah.
But it's the net premium that we look at to make the final decision. So that way they were the lowest responsible bidder for that.
Very good.
But they had the lowest rate, but they gave us a little bit less premium.
So it was a true auction, so very interesting. Okay, so that closes the standing committee portion of the meeting, and we will move directly into general commentary by the Township Committee. Who would like to go first? Go ahead, Mark. You?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to send my sincere condolences to the Meyer family, family and friends, for Fred, who passed away about 2 weeks ago. I think I'm the third person talking about this tonight. But Fred was a longtime member of Mount Campbell Fire Company. He served as a lieutenant, as a captain, and did 3 stints as a battalion chief. I always appreciated Fred's input on the fire grounds, at meetings, and at drills. He always provided a depth of knowledge, and he always provided any constructive criticism he had with a smile, which was always greatly appreciated. He was a dedicated first responder. Our community was fortunate to have him and his commitment to our department, and his legacy really lives through his sons Kyle and Tim, who are members of the Morris Township Fire Department, and also his stepsons Sean and Brendan McCluskey, who we're fortunate to have as career firefighters in Morris Township as well. I'd also like to recognize the hard work of both our career and volunteer divisions of the fire department as we celebrate our 100-year anniversary. As a volunteer firefighter for a decade, I understand the commitment it takes to serve as a volunteer, and I would extend my deepest thanks to our current members, our past members, and to our career division. And lastly, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and wish you the very best to you and your families. And if you are traveling, I hope you travel safely and come home soon.
2 small items, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. It's always good to see the first sign of spring, and that's when Pat Sims comes here and tells us about the Valentine's Day rose sale. It's a very, very good feeling. We've had a very good night, long night, a lot of discussion, so I thank you all for being here, and a very happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you.
Mr. Arvanites. Kathy?
Well, my comment, I have one comment. Monday was Veterans Day, and I'd like to thank Tony Romano and Jim Kavanaugh and others for their work in organizing the services. They were really moving. I was very moved by that, and it was a great reminder of all that we appreciate about the service and the bravery and the sacrifice that our veterans have given on our behalf. And it was also, for me, just a great reminder of the values that they served for. You know, we can keep that in mind and remember those every day. So, anyway, I just wanted to mention my appreciation for Veterans Day.
Very good. Mr. Arvanites?
I know everyone wants to go. I'm going to share a small story and tie it in with Veterans Day as well. My father, when he was growing up in the mountains of Greece in the middle of nowhere, the Germans came in and occupied his little town of 19 homes. And at one point, they lined up everyone that lived in the village there to shoot them. And a handful of people, unfortunately, were killed. And the three people that were next were my father, his mother, and his brother. And luckily, they obviously didn't get shot. My father, 3 years later, came to this country, and a few years after that then served in the U.S. Army. And so I'm proud of my father for doing that, not only sacrificing leaving his family in Greece to come to an unknown land here, but also proud of him for serving and sacrificing his time and his life to protect all of the freedoms that he was allowed to enjoy by coming here. And so not only do I want to thank my father for his past service, I'd like to thank every service person in our country for their past service, for their continued service, and for those that we've lost, and Mr. Meyer as well, may their memories be eternal. And I'd like to also wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I, too, am going to comment on Veterans Day because I was both honored and humbled to speak at the joint Morris Township and Morristown Veterans Day ceremonies. And I wanted to let the community know that my remarks focused on disabled veterans amongst us and our obligation to give back to those that are in need of assistance. And again, thank you to all our veterans. I'm going to hand to Mrs. Emilio a copy of my full remarks so she can enter those in the record. I have spoken several times this year about gun violence and gun safety, and I came across some facts related to veterans and gun safety that I wanted to share with the public given the Veterans Day holiday this week. Veterans are more likely to own guns than non-veterans and are more likely to die by firearm suicide. Gun ownership increases the likelihood of firearm suicide, and suicide attempts with a gun are nearly always lethal. Across all suicide attempts not involving a firearm, less than 5% will result in death. But for gun suicides, those statistics are flipped, and approximately 85% of gun suicide attempts result in death. Our country must do a better job addressing the challenges that veterans face when they return home from war, like working to end veterans' homelessness, and we also need to do some work on veteran firearm suicide and address that issue as well. To this end, I wanted to ask the community that we all write to our state and federal legislators to, one, advocate for strong red flag laws which allow for temporary firearm removal during times of crisis, to, two, promote the secure firearm storage, including unloading the ammunition, locking up the firearm, and storing the firearm and ammunition in separate locations. Three, encourage the health professionals to talk about the risks of firearm access with their patients. And four, invest in the additional research on the effectiveness of initiatives like the Gun Shop Project, which provides suicide prevention literature to firearms dealers. So to truly honor those who have served, our veterans, we must fully support the strategies and additional research necessary to prevent veteran firearm suicide. This month, our meeting here is 1 week earlier than usual, and this is due to the annual New Jersey State League of Municipalities Conference that's taking place next week in Atlantic City. our governing body, I think all of us are going down, along with many of our professionals and department heads, to attend the conference, and it's a great learning opportunity for many functions related to operating a municipality. But that is the reason why we're holding our meeting 1 week early this month. We discussed earlier the 14 standing committees, and one of those is called Legislation, Government Liaison, and Grants. And Deputy Mayor Kathy Wilson is on that standing committee along with Mark Yorfie, and I want to congratulate our Deputy Mayor for proposing some new state-level legislation that's going to be considered at next week's League of Municipalities convention. She didn't mention it in her remarks, but she has proposed legislation that is titled Resolution for an Amendment to the Municipal Land Use Law, increasing the 10-day period for giving notice of an application for development. And I want to turn it over to you to explain to the public what that means. Very quickly,
okay,
brief.
What it means, we are proposing to extend the 10-day notice requirement to 21 days for people who live within 200 feet of a proposed property development. And the reason for that is because so many people don't get their notification until just a few days before the public hearing and final vote. So this would extend the time and people would be notified earlier. And the only way to do that is to amend the state law.
Mm-hmm.
So we're putting forth a resolution to do that, and we're hoping to get the backing of the league.
Right. So this governing body this year has worked very, very hard to communicate with the public, to increase communications, to be more transparent with the office hours. Well, the office hours were implemented last year, the newsletter, many different things. And I just see this as another example of, communicating better with the public by giving them more notice of meetings and being able to come out. So I laud you for your efforts and your good idea, and I hope it goes well. Lastly,
I just have to say our professionals were very supportive, and they wrote the resolution.
Very good.
Credit where credit's due.
Some of you might have seen signs about the Mill Road Bridge. I just want to let everybody know that the Mill Road Bridge is being replaced, and it could take up to 6 months to replace that bridge. It's a full bridge replacement, so the signs are up, and I'm not sure exactly when work's going to start.
Yeah, phone call into the county.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out the start date. The signs are up. We don't know the exact start date.
It'll be before the end of the month.
Yeah, before the end of the month. So that bridge is being taken down, and there are going to be detours put in place. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that's coming. And lastly, drivers are urged to use extra caution and watch for white-tailed deer as deer mating season begins. I personally have noticed a lot more dead deer on the side of the road in the last few weeks. Peak mating season for deer in New Jersey runs from October throughout November and into mid-December in all areas of New Jersey, and the white-tailed deer become more active during this mating season, which is known as the fall rut. So deers are more apt to jump out into the roadway. There are more deers that are active this time of year, so please just be careful driving, especially I find at dusk. And with that, I will close my public remark, my personal remarks, and we are going to move on to an additional section of public commentary. I know, Mary, you're here to give some comments, so I'll invite you up to the microphone. And please state your, even though I know your name and address, please state it for the record.
Yes, my name is Mary Gorse, and my address is 23 Normandy Parkway in Morris Township. And I would briefly like to talk about two things. Thank you, Mayor Griselle, for helping us on one item. February 21st of 2019, the water company, I never can get those initials straight, so you know what I mean. The MCU, blah, blah, blah.
The water company, mean? The water company, or you said the wire company? The water company? Water company. SMCMUA, okay.
Yes, yes. Thank you. SMCMUA.
Right.
I never get it straight. I saw them walking all over our yard, and I didn't know who they were. And they even went underneath our house. We have like a 3-season room, and they're under there. And I was sitting at my desk watching these people a few feet from my window. So to make a very long story short, what the bottom line was is that a neighbor's water line goes underneath our house, which we never knew about in any way, shape, or form, wasn't on any map, and all of that. So
we thought the, I'm going to say water company, we thought the water company would do something about this, and they didn't, so my husband wrote a nice note to Mayor Gazelle and asked for help, and so he forwarded messages to Mr. Quinn and Mr. Mills, and a letter was written to the water company, and we finally got the water company to issue a letter, but that was like maybe a month ago. So it was a good letter from the water company, but the problem is that nothing's being done. The liability belongs to this other homeowner who is 2 properties away. Her water line goes through our next door neighbor and then through us, and we have a very long property, so it's really a lot of distance. The water company determined that it was galvanized pipe, and galvanized pipe from like the early 1900s would at best be galvanized on the outside and not on the inside, which means that that's a very, very old line. So it amazes me that the homeowner is not doing anything about this, because I believe that affects the quality of the water in her house. The reason why all this started with the water company going through our yard was because there was a problem with water on her property. There was a leak of some type, and it was on the other side of the meter, so just turning off the meter or whatever is in the shutoff in the house didn't do it. It was on the other side. So that's, and it took them a while to find where the pipe went into the main line, which runs down Normandy Parkway. So there is now a hazardous spot where it's been dug out. I continue to put little blue flags out there so that no one gets hurt. We don't have too many pedestrians along there, but every once in a while we do, but hopefully it's marked enough, except when the snow comes it'll be a problem. Anyway, so the long and short of it is that the water is probably not a very good quality going through this very old line to the house, and I think, this is not a professional opinion, this is strictly what I say, that if there would be some problem with the water line, they shut off the water line, or there's a water main break, there could be backflow from that line into the rest of the water line, and that could contaminate the rest of the water line. So what I'm here for is to, in other places I've lived, not here, different things that were required for sewers and water lines and things like that, the homeowner was required to do something about it. It wasn't left up to them to do something or not do something. So my question or plea is, if the township could write to this homeowner and tell them that they really need to do something, because it could possibly endanger the water quality for the community, and of course was stated in the letter from I believe the township and the water company, correct me if I'm wrong, that the liability, if this water line breaks, and it will flood our house because we have a basement, and it will be her liability to correct it, so I think it's really stupid not to do the right thing and to put a good water line in and get good quality water in the house. So I'm asking if the township can do anything about encouraging her to join into the water line off of Featherley Road, and therefore discontinue the water line that goes through our next door neighbor's property and all across our property. And it's beyond me, my understanding, because we, as some of you know, built a brand new house there. We have a basement, and so this water line goes apparently underneath our basement. We must have just missed it by inches when we were digging out the basement. I really don't know. I was incredulous. I didn't think it could be, but they assure me that, they were under our house following the line. So, under our three-season room. Okay, so that's...
Yeah, so I'm aware of your problem. I'm not sure how well-versed the Township Committee is, but I've had discussions about your issue with Mr. Quinn and Mr. Mills, and you got the letter from what we call SMUCA, which is SMCMUA, we call it SMUCA. that encouraged her to connect the water line to Featherly. I believe she had some fees waived as well.
Yes,
She had some fees waived to encourage her to make that connection. But I do not believe, I'm going to turn to Mr. Mills, I don't believe we can force her to do that, although Mr. Mills might advise you that you yourself as a homeowner with the water line crossing your property, you might have some other recourse?
All correct, yes, Mayor.
So, please explain.
I don't want to presume to give legal advice, but the
Yes, this is not official legal advice, but it's just a little bit of direction based on our discussion.
The ability to deal with the problem, the jurisdiction, if you will, lies with the water authority, not the township. We're a constituent of the water company, and perhaps we could, weigh in with a letter to them, requesting that they address the situation. I think when we spoke on the phone, or I spoke with somebody other than, maybe it was a conference call, my memory's not super clear, but there was a question about whether or not there may have been, I raised it, an easement that allows the existence of this pipe underneath to be continued under your house. I never heard back whether or not that was the case. If not, certainly if there's a failure of that pipe, one, it jeopardizes, as you've described, your basement, and two, if there's no legal right for it to be there, you could shut it off and prevent its reuse. But I think it's something that, needs to be addressed in a neighborly fashion as soon as possible.
Well,
and would that be in her deed? Yeah. The crossing would be in your deed.
There's no easement.
There's no easement in your deed.
Right.
Check that, there's no easement.
Okay, Mr. Quinn confirms that.
And we don't exactly know where the water pipe is.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't know exactly where the pipe is.
Well, we know where the end point is, we know where the two parts are.
But they don't know where the exact.
All right, we don't know the exact route of the pipe.
They could shut it off at the street and shut it off at her house and just let it, and if she got a new connection to Featherly, that would be enough.
All right, so I might suggest that you write her a letter,
well,
encouraging her that...
My husband has been on the phone every week with SMAC, whatever you're calling.
But I think you need to write a neighborly letter to your neighbor stating that there's no easement in place and maybe we'd like you to move it.
There was a certified letter sent from the water company to her, and there's been no response. That you were copied on that letter.
Is your domestic water supply from the same pipe?
No, ours comes off Normandy Parkway. Hers should not come off Normandy Parkway, but well, actually, then the answer to your question is yes, because she's connected into the same water line that we are, but in different spots.
Okay.
But she should be connected on Featherly.
They're obviously downstream from you, if you will.
Yes, by a little bit. Now, the second thing is an interesting point. As some of you know, I was very involved in the Honeywell property, not particularly wanting what happened to happen, not wanting the 234 condos or townhomes being put there, and of course, I lost. But I put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into that. So, during all those hearings, a lot of people objected for this, that, or the other reason. A lot of those reasons have come true, like transportation, the amount of traffic that's on Normandy Parkway and so forth. But there was one item that was never mentioned, which has come up, and you won't believe it, but it has to do with the post office. The post office, when those condos were put in, now put 234 additional people on the route for the person that serves our house. So what happened? He quit. And so he happened to be a person that had a huge amount of seniority. He was an excellent carrier. The only time we had a problem was when there was a temporary on for him because he had a lot of vacation time. And the reason for that is a predecessor neighbor put a double mailbox in front of his house, and so our mail was always put there when a temporary was there, even though because this neighbor never, put a number on it. Okay, and so what's happening now is the route has been out for bid and no one will take it because it's a nightmare. And so when that happens, then instead of seniority playing, they call it juniority. So the most junior person delivers the mail. So we don't know where our mail is. So I don't know if the township can ask the post office to hire a person who just handles 234 units over there, or, you know, if there's any input that the township can do. But I'm not the only, I probably have the biggest problem because of the mailbox being on Featherley rather than on Normandy.
So the mail is a federal function, not a local function. I can recommend that you write Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. I know Congresswoman Sherrill has been in touch with the Postmaster General on other issues in Morris Township that have gotten resolved. So, so you could, Mr. Quinn also suggested you actually go to the Morristown Post Office and ask to see the postmaster himself.
Oh, we have done that.
You have done that?
Yeah.
On Ridgeville Avenue? Or in Morristown on the Green?
Not on the Green.
At the Ridgeville Avenue? Okay.
That's the office.
That's the office, yeah.
I think the other one's going to be discontinued, right? The Morristown one? Anyway.
Possibly. That's
all right. Well,
the Congresswoman's office should be able to help you. When I used to work for a member of Congress, and I used to help out with postal issues, and they're usually able to get a thorough response from the D.C. office of the post office pretty quickly.
Oh,
so
good.
I would recommend you reach out to Congresswoman.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And if you send me an email, I can send you the phone number for the Congresswoman.
No,
local.
my husband is very familiar with her.
Okay, very good. Good to hear. Would anybody else from the public like to be heard?
Good evening, Diane Holland, 26 Northbridge Place. I missed last month, but I enjoyed watching the video, and so I am pleased to see that the video is working. I have a question. When was this Eye in the Sky installed? Does anybody know?
It's always been here because it was hooked up to the police department for security. And then it was upgraded last year.
Okay, great. All right. I saw on the agenda that we're looking for new police hires, and then there have been 2 new ones, I think, like two months ago. I don't seem to ever hear that anybody's retiring. I guess I missed those. But how many people are on the police force?
We've had a lot of retirements.
Really?
Yes.
I guess
we've not added any new police officers. We've just filled in the retirement spots. But what do we have? 43 altogether. It's been 43 for quite. It's been 43 for quite a long time.
Okay.
We only hired the replacement.
That's okay. But then, along with Mrs. Gorse's comment about the Honeywell and looking into with the Honeywell and the Menon, are we going to increase the size of the police department?
It's possible, yeah. We're going to have to look. I think we're going to have to look at that next year.
Next year.
When Menon comes online, and or it's being called. What's it called?
The community or something like that.
Yeah, it's the new Lenark community. Yeah, we're going to have to take a look at that for sure. You bring up a good point.
Yeah, okay. I noticed that Convent Station has had some rehab done to it recently. They've been in and scrubbed the tiles and things like that, so that's nice.
You've got to replace them, though. Many of the tiles are just broken.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's all, yeah. What's the status on Collinsville Playground?
It's been done for about 2 months.
Okay.
There are children playing on it, I'm told, almost every day now. It's getting a lot of use.
Good. Was there a ribbon cutting? I mean, I may have missed that.
The spring.
Yeah, it got a little bit too cold, and we wanted to make it a real community event, and if it was chilly out, we thought that the community wouldn't come out, so we're going to wait till the spring, unfortunately.
All right. Okay.
But people are using it. It's there, and it's beautiful, and people are using it.
Okay. And then this was just a personal experience that I bought Oreos that I don't normally do. And I brought them home and I put them in a cookie jar and saw that they were in a plastic sleeve, a trough, which had a number on it. But with our change of what we can recycle, I can see that there are a variety of product producers who are perhaps using a number that is not being recycled frequently. And I'm wondering if the environmental committee has thought about some sort of project to interact with product producers and say, look, we are trying to save the environment.
Yeah.
And you move from a 6 to a 3, what's it going to take? Do you know anything about it?
Well, you bring up something that I was
whatever it is. Yeah.
You bring up something I was going to discuss next week at the League of Municipalities Conference, because there is a session. They have sessions on numerous topics, but there's one session on the issue of recycling and the problems in New Jersey. And I was going to bring up just that if perhaps we could pass legislation in the state of New Jersey to address all the recyclable materials that are no longer being taken and force manufacturers to use the ones that are accessible. So I was going to actually mention that exact same thing as at a state level. Locally, I don't know what we could do, but bring it up as a state initiative to try to force manufacturers who sell product in this state to use the ones that are acceptable.
Is the state reducing the number of the products that are acceptable? Because we've gone from...
It's not the state, it's the industry. It's the recycling industry that's determined what is acceptable and what's not. It's natural market forces based on supply and demand of those materials, and there's not enough demand for those other ones, unfortunately.
Okay, all right.
And, it's a big issue in the country.
We have the updated acceptable recycling numbers in the newsletter that we sent out.
Right. It's like 1, 2, and 4 or something.
Double check.
I know.
I don't want to tell you that.
I saw it. I did see it. But then I don't even know if the number on this package was acceptable or not, but I don't buy Oreos very often, so I don't see the packages very often. But it was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more of this that I wasn't aware of, and I'm glad you're going to bring it up next week. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard?
Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Just wanted to ask, is for an update on the open space tract on the backside of the sort of the former Honeywell property. Have we taken ownership of that yet, or has that been turned over to us, or?
I think I recorded the deed a couple of weeks ago.
Oh.
But I have to take another look, and we record a lot of documents. So, but I'm pretty sure we have. There was some question about the easement,
right?
But we resolved that, and I believe the deed is recorded. I'll double check.
And is there any sort of early notion, or what will be the township's approach for like what will be implemented there, or how it will be used? Is that something that's ideas, or just?
I think that's going to be taken on by the Recreation Committee next year. So I don't think there's been much discussion so far as what might go there.
Just internal.
Yeah, just some internal ideas, but I think we're going to ask the Recreation Committee to come up with some ideas.
Some ideas, thank you. The other question I have up in that area is, I guess maybe 6, 7 weeks ago, I was walking the traction line and saw a small platoon of New Jersey Transit workers, maybe 20-plus trucks and all kinds of specialized equipment that I surmised had something to do with the quiet zone. They were dragging large train cars slowly with cameras on it. I was assuming that was something to do with the quiet zone. Is there any update? Will that be something that you think will be implemented in 2020, or?
Well, you've probably seen, if you drove by, there's new crossing.
Oh, they have put in new crossing.
Yeah, new crossing gates have been installed, and the old crossing, the secondary crossing for those two houses, has now been. I drove down just a couple of days ago. Has been eliminated. It's no longer there. You can't cross there anymore. And what? And they redid the pavement, yeah, around the crossing. So I think it's. So I don't know what else needs to happen for the quiet zone the trains to actually stop.
Right.
Honking.
Yeah, they have to finish the project.
Yeah. So, but this should be done shortly. But we've made great progress in the past month.
Okay. And then at a prior meeting, maybe 2 or 3 months back, I had raised concerns over the stop signs there. If you're coming up Con Road, exiting out towards Madison Ave, there's 2 stop signs that are right inside the gate there that's along the traction line, and the stop signs literally sit about this high. So I don't know if they have to be official height, but they're very easy, I would think, to miss. Is that a township thing, or is that part of the NJ Transit?
So Mr. Quinn just mentioned the same thing I was going to question, whether there are requirements on private property to have certain types of signs. I have a secondary question that, given that it's going to be access and it's not usable open space yet where that tract is, but once it turns into usable open space, maybe we'll have to revisit it because it'll be a township facility. But right now
Title 39 would not apply to private property unless, for example, a shopping center wrote a letter to the municipality requesting that they enforce Title 39. So those would just be unofficial stop signs and therefore not regulated.
Yeah, so it's part of the improvements. One interesting thing that happened in the past couple of weeks is that the building at the Honeywell sites for the residential reached the 75% rate of occupancy. And once that happens, the homeowner association takes over control of the facilities and management. So there's now an active homeowner association over there. And if you have a concern, you could address it directly, I think, to the homeowners association, because they should have a concern about it as well.
Thank you.
Only for the residential portion.
Correct.
Yes.
They don't have control of the site that's part of it.
So who controls that stop sign then? It's not the homeowners.
It's literally right up against the fence of the direction of the arrow. 2 of them.
Okay. So Mr. Quinn says that the homeowners association doesn't control that crossing per se. They only control the residential section. But it's still something you might consider writing to them, and might be a concern of theirs as well. But again, it's private property.
Thank you. And my last comment, maybe it's more of a request or something for the committee to think of or to work into the budget. I know in the past it's sort of been requested, if it's at all possible, to, with all the process improvements of transparency that we've seen, I think, in the open communication and the adjustment of the way this meeting is run, giving people access to get their 2 cents in earlier, and then also here at the end. I mean, I think it's all very welcomed by the community. I know if at all possible, there could be any consideration to installing some sort of screen that can be used for public presentations behind here. Is that something we might see, or?
That's ahead of you.
Oh, you are? Oh,
yes.
It's already been ordered?
Yeah, we're getting
tomorrow?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, good.
Because we've talked about it for the planning board as well.
Oh.
And we talked about requiring electronic documents from people so that we can project them.
Oh, fantastic.
Instead of using the stand.
Yeah, because it can be difficult sometimes.
No, yeah, so it'll be helpful for a number of the bodies that use this room.
That's good news. All right.
Oh.
What's that?
Projector and the screens are on order.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard from the public? And seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting. Just flips my agenda. Let's see, consideration of monthly reports. The following reports for the month of October 2019 are on file with the Office of the Township Clerk and the Township Administrator. We have reports from the Tax Collector, Finance, Police, Joint Court, and Joint Library and Fire. Will somebody move consideration of monthly reports?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did we do the consent calendar?
We did the consent calendar earlier. Yes, I did. Claims for payment, list of bills and vouchers, $10,531,920.18. That's a pretty low number relative to what we've approved earlier this year. No big transfers. Will somebody move the claims for payment?
So moved, sir.
Second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Archimedes, Mr. Garza.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson. Yes. Mayor Griswold.
Yes. And just to point out that the agenda says that we're going to reconvene on December 18, 2019, but again, I think that we're going to have a special meeting projected on December 2nd, so keep your eyes open for that. It's going to be a very short meeting to address one single ordinance, as we discussed earlier tonight, which will then have a public hearing on December 18th. So I hope to see everybody back here on December 18th, and I will adjourn the meeting.